Hey everyone, welcome back to Land Investing Online, where we teach students how to profitably buy and sell vacant land. This is the simplest, least competitive, and most profitable sector of real estate. For more information, visit landinvestingonline.com to join our free Discord with tons of successful investors. Come learn from the best. Again, please subscribe, like our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcast, whatever you're on. It means a lot to us and the business. I'm Daniel Apke, joined again by my brother and business partner, Ron Apke. Welcome, Ron.
Hey, Dan, good to be here.
Today's topic, we're going to talk about subdividing properties. But before we get into that, let's go over one of the questions from a student member of ours. Question is, I know you've talked a lot about this before, but I wanted to get your opinion on my situation. I have $3,000 saved to invest in land investing, and I can invest an additional $500 a month. I'm not looking to quit my job currently. I just want to make some extra money. What are your thoughts with this startup amount?
So 3,000. I mean, I honestly don't mind that amount. I think that I know we say 3 to 5. But I think typically I really like the mindset of being able to put additional money into it every month. If you're going into that mindset, if you go into it with like I'm only willing to spend $3,000 or something, it's probably gonna be a little tight, to be honest with you. Um, but having that extra 500 a month is going to be able to pay for some mail. Like this can get you through 3 or 4 months, I think, to be honest. If you're willing to put that 500, you're going to get deals also. Like after a month or two, a couple mailers, you're going to get some deals and be able to make some money. From this person, Dan, I think the thing that stands out to me, like I like their not lack of urgency. I don't think that's the right phrase, but I like that they are understanding that it's a little bit of a process opposed to like I'm trying to quit my job in 3 months. I have $3,000. How do I do it? That's my thoughts. I think it's very doable where you are.
I think it's doable too, because that 3,000 can get you a decent amount, plus the 500 a month, plus you're not quitting your job. So you have that stability behind you. I like it. I think you got this, and I'm curious to see what we can take that 3,000 plus 500 a month too. Like maybe in a year you'll have $1 million in your bank. Honestly, like I like keeping track of people that are starting that stay consistent, and really keeping track of that and seeing like 6 to 12 months. Let's see where they're at, and there's gonna be some really really cool stories out of this. But today's topic: subdividing properties. What is subdividing, Ron?
Okay, so what subdividing is, and I think it's a good topic. So this is kind of we've talked about niches a lot. So this is another niche that you can be in. Like we've talked about, not ideally not off the bat, but something you can build into. So subdividing properties, what that is, for example, so let's say you get under contract on a 50-acre property. It's got a lot of road frontage. It's long, got a lot of road frontage. It's splitting those 50 properties into five 10-acre properties. So that at its core is what subdividing is. It takes a survey typically to do this. So you need to survey and cut off those 10 acres and get new APNs. But I don't want to take it much further than that right now, Dan. That is the definition of what subdividing is, though. Taking a bigger property and making a bunch of smaller properties. You can do it just 50 acres and have two 25-acre properties. But that essentially what it is taking a single property and making more properties.
So why would you want to do this then?
I think the biggest thing with subdividing is you're going to get more profit. That's why we don't suggest it at first because it takes a little bit more time. But if let's say 50 acres let's keep that 50-acre example. I like that a lot. Let's say 50 acres sells for whatever, 5 grand an acre. So 250,000, 10 acres, 10-acre parcels may sell for 80 grand or something like that. And that's not unrealistic numbers, like 50 grand. I'm trying to think. So 50 acres for 250, that's 5 grand an acre. 10 acres could easily be selling for 8 grand an acre, which is 80 grand. You take that 80 grand times five, you're making 400, you're getting $400,000 back opposed to 250. You obviously have some more cost with subdividing in terms of the survey and stuff, but let's say that costs $10,000, $15,000. You're going to get 300, let's say 80 grand opposed to 250. So you make 130 more $1,000. The process takes a little longer. But that's why we do it. That's why I think it's a really good niche. It's specialized for sure, but that's the main thing. It's making some more profit per deal.
Making more profit for deal. Exactly. And so then what would the process look like to do that? How do you subdivide? Say I have a 50-acre piece. I'm not stressing over money. I have tons of money in the bank. I don't want to turn it quick. I'm fine to put the time in to subdivide. What how would that work?
Yeah, so you want to first of all, the main thing is finding out what the county, what the if you're in city limits, you need to find out what the city allows. Because if they don't allow it, and then you can't move forward with doing it, it's just not going to happen. They're not going to make multiple APNs out of one. So that is the first step every single time. Even if you're not targeting subdividing properties, like when you get a maybe you get a property back that's like this is perfect to do this with, call the county, call the city, make find out their regulations on subdividing. It's going to be called a minor subdivision because you're not building an actual subdivision with 51-acre lots where it's going to be a bunch of single family homes. It's a minor subdivision. They define that each county typically. Some of them is, like I said, just five. If you're splitting one property into five, that's minor. Anything above that might be called a major subdivision. So you want to keep in that minor subdivision definitely to start. And then you're gonna, if let's say it's okay and everything, you're gonna talk to them, talk to the county about the process. You're most likely, like I said, gonna need a survey. So you would get a surveyor describe. They do this all the time. And hopefully you can get the first deal. You can get a surveyor that helps you with the process, that understands how the recording goes with the county. But once that happens, the surveyor can hopefully help you, and you're going to get 5 APNs from that one. So 5 different parcel numbers. And then like that takes about 3 to 6 months, probably closer to three, honestly. And then once you get those APNs, like you can sell those separately. You'll see it if you go on the MLS, go on Zillow in a decently like a not a too rural area, but something outside of big cities. You'll see people selling these all the time where you'll see on the map where they split it. They'll call it lot one, lot two, lot three, and so on. But that's really the process, Dan. I like it a lot because how much money you can make, and you can really expand your profit. I think your margin.
Yeah, and it brings me back to what I like to say. I don't know if I ever say it on this show, but where do all the billionaires lie in this world for the most part? Do you know, Ron?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
No. What are you referring to?
Uh, well, multiple things, but a lot of the billionaires go development. They might have made their
Yeah.
money somewhere else. Bill Gates is in different developments. Everyone's developing. There's so much money in developing, building improvements, all that stuff. So that's kind of where this is going. Like you're putting a little bit of extra work in and getting more equity out of it, type of deal. And there's so many different levels to it, right? So developing doesn't necessarily need to be, although the money is in, 20 plus story complexes, it doesn't need to be there. Like you can take a 50-acre plot, like Ron's saying, and create a big subdivision if you do it right. Very risky. You got to do it right, and you got to do your market research to make sure people are gonna want to live there. But you can take that 50 acres and cut it up into point 0.5, even 0.25, like lots, and make a beautiful HOA subdivision out of it. Put stone entrance, gates, all kinds of good stuff in there. Maybe even like put some community things in there. Whatever it is, there are so many different levels to it. And I was talking to one of my friend's moms actually. She lives in a new HOA community subdivision in outside of Miami, and she was telling me about the prices, how they skyrocketed. I think she bought hers for 650, and her neighbor just bought it for 1.3 million. She just bought it a year and a half ago, and that's just how Florida is right now. Um, but I'm thinking of it not off the value she got, although that's a crazy amount, 650 to 1.3. I'm thinking of it, my gosh, these lots, wonder what they're selling to these builders for. Like they just subdivided in a neighborhood that didn't exist with raw land, and they're taking it and selling these lots to builders for 200K. Like what did they buy that 30 acres they're sitting on for, type of stuff? And there's just so much money. That being said, the more improvements you have, the more riskier it gets, the more knowledge you need, the more money you need up front, the longer it takes. So like Ron said, the pros of subdividing, there's more money if you do it right. You can acquire at higher prices. So you can acquire, if you're going to, depending on how you subdivide, like if you're in that Miami situation, you'll need a very specific piece of land. But if you're subdividing, you can pay 80% for it. or you can really even pay 100% of market value for it in Florida, knowing it's going to appreciate, cut it up and get 200% depending on how you do it. So you can pay more for it, but it becomes so much, it's a niche, like Ron said, becomes so much more of a specialization. And there's so many more things you need to know, and the process really plays out. And that's not really what we're advising here. If you want to get into that, that's awesome. I personally do down the road. But that takes a really, really huge commitment and long term knowledge growth, I'd say. But some of the cons are, like I said, it takes longer, it's more risk, and there's more properties in the end to sell. So that 50 acres now, you have to sell 5 different properties or whatever it is, 5 10 acre properties or 10 5 acre properties, whatever that is, how you do it. You have a lot more properties to sell now. So it's the operations increase as well, along with the operations on a lot of this stuff. And then legality, all the different stuff and there's a lot that's involved in this stuff, and you just got to make sure to do your due diligence. But like Ron's saying, there's a lot of money to be made just in the simple subdividing, and it's not even a subdivision really, it's just taking it, you are subdividing it, but you're subdividing, real subdividing, I think of neighborhood lots and stuff like that. This is literally just splitting it. You have 1,000 feet of road frontage, you're splitting it, splitting it all across the road frontage. You don't need to put in any roads, anything at all. You just need to split it, get a surveyor out there. That's pretty simple, and there's good returns in that. What do you think?
Yeah, so full transparency, guys, we've done minor subdivisions, like we're talking about with that 50 down to 5, not exactly with those numbers. Those are pretty easy. It takes some time, like it's going to be a learning curve. You need to learn with the counties. We have not done a major subdivision up to this point, like Daniel said. And like Daniel said, he's very interested in doing this down the road as far as a major one. I am as well, where you're actually getting those lots extremely ready for houses. I've heard people, Dan. I was a couple days ago. I was listening to someone about land. What they do, they'll let people subdivide, and then they will buy like 2 lots in there in new subdivisions where they know the areas. Typically, not a lot of restrictions and HOAs and that stuff. And then they'll buy the 2 lots, and they'll literally just hold them, and they'll let everyone else buy these other lots and build houses. And when those lots will double, triple, and they'll probably hold them 2 years, let people build around, and then it's going to be in a nice neighborhood, and you have the only 2 empty lots in the neighborhood. So it's more of a long term play what they did. I just thought that was interesting. Like they'll buy lots in a real subdivision, hold them for 2 years. The price will double, triple, quadruple as houses are built around it. And then everyone wants no, not everyone wants to build a house in a community that's all being built right now. But if you have 1 or 2 lots in a nice community, like those are going to sell for a lot more than when you bought it. And I thought that was really interesting, Dan, when I heard that a couple days ago. More of a long term play, and it's not my business model by any means. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and it's low risk. If you sold all the other lots and you're already profiting, you keep those two, tuck them away, and see what happens. Um,
So this is someone, Dan, who actually targeted. Like they didn't subdivide themselves.
uh,
They would actually buy lots from people who subdivide. They'll buy the first 2 lots or something like that when they go on the market, and then just hold them. The other 50 lots are all being bought to be built on right away. Well, they just hold them for a couple of years, and let their whatever $20,000 turn into 60 or 80.
the one thing that concerns me with subdividing a little bit, and I'm not against it, I really do believe in it, but major subdivisions like Ron's talking about is, as land investors, how many subdivisions and properties do we get back that are just in failed subdivisions where there's just no building? There might some of these are, like, I can recall quite a few where they have nice roads to them. Like, it's a nice community. It just looks like a completely failed subdivision. No one bought land there. There's no house, or I guess people bought land there, but there's no houses and stuff. That's kind of what I'd be scared of, and that's why I said it's so important to have the knowledge of the area. Where I do my first major subdivision is going to be an area I'm extremely familiar in, and I know where people want houses. Um, and it's probably going to be a more populated area or very growing area where people want land or space or whatever it is. I'm going to know, like, I'm going to be certain that area, we're going to have buyers there. And I see some of these in rural America, and they've been sitting there and there's just no activity. And that's kind of the scary part. Although a lot of them aren't owned by the initial subdivider. They did do a decent job a lot of times selling these properties. I've noticed. So they're probably still coming up in the end, I think.
I agree. And the biggest thing, like we throw a lot of those away, and like I don't even dig deeper. The ones we do go through excuse me, due diligence, they end up having crazy restrictions. So these people subdivide the lots and then they'll put deeded restrictions on them, like you have to build a house that's 3,000 square feet, and they have these giant visions in their mind, like we're gonna have a bunch of mansions here, and then the location's wrong, or like just people aren't gonna do that. Um, but that is with those major subdivisions, like I would guess 50% of them fail, Dan. I don't know for sure. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but you go rural America and you start looking at little subdivided things, like you'll see the roads aren't even built out to half of these, or are tree covered now. Like they're not maintained because no one bought the lots, or no people bought the lots, but no one built. So I wonder when we see those, Dan. I know they aren't owned by the original person who subdivided, but I wonder how many of those were sold just crazy cheap.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a weird balance because you need to put deeded restrictions on subdivisions, or else you're going to have people with mobile homes buying them and putting them in that neighborhood, and then you're not going to have a nice subdivision. The real money's at the top where those 3,000 acres are, those nice subdivision. That's where I think the real money. Maybe there's a middle ground there too. But then if you're targeting 3,000 square foot houses, you, like Ron said, you better be in an area where people with $1 million are going to want to move. Where
Yep.
people with $1 million can't find a neighborhood like that that's already has existing lots. Like the demand needs to be there. And I really think the biggest part of this is just the market research, honestly. But we're kind of getting off the track. I mean, this is all related to major subdivisions and future potential if you want to go this route. But there's really so much money in improvements on these properties, like subdividing is an improvement, and you can do it really simple. I encourage everyone to try it on one of their properties. Maybe if it's a 10-acre lot with a lot of road frontage, split it into two. See, make sure it all makes sense and you're listening to what we're saying here. But I would highly encourage, if you've already made a return, you're sitting on some capital, you don't need to turn it fast. Give it a try and see how you like it. That's kind of my advice for any improvements, honestly. I like to experiment with 10 to 20% of our stuff. Although we haven't really stuck to that. That's kind of my goal. Um, we're trying to do that more, I think, and especially with these different improvements. But I highly encourage people to try.
Yeah, for sure. I don't have much more to add. I think it's so easy just to sell the land as is. Like even if you get a perfect piece of land to subdivide, like you need to be able to maximize your profit. I'm not saying do it on every deal or anything like that. Um, it's hard to do that first one because everything's working so well. But once you become not, you don't even need to be an expert in it because it's not that difficult to do minor subdivisions. But once you do it once, like you'll be able to realize, like, wow. And 50 acres is harder to sell than 10 acres, Dan.
That's
That's
true.
another thing. Like 10-acre properties, you're going to have a ton of buyers, and not everything's going to work out that perfectly where you can split 50 into 10 5 times. The shape has to be really good for that. But yeah, try things out. Like you need to, once you're making money buying and selling land, like trying things can really expand this. It can make it more sustainable. Like we talk about with these niches. That's why I like talking about these niches. It makes your business more sustainable. You can do other things that are very valuable to the market as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to emphasize that do not try this if it's your first or second property. Have 10 properties under your belt just buying and selling. You learn that process. You're an expert in that now, hopefully, and then try some things out, because I don't want you sitting on a property for 8 months subdividing it. Something goes wrong. You spend all this money on the surveys and doing all this. It's just more risk. So get your experience down and then try this. But that's all I have to add, guys. Any last things before I close out, Ron?
All good here, Dan.
All good. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Visit landinvestingonline.com to join our free Discord where Ron and I are involved. Please like and subscribe our YouTube channel, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or whatever you are listening on. It means a ton to our business and it drives us forward. Other than that, guys, we'll see you next episode. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, guys.